What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Tuesday, January 9th, 2018 here, getting into the week. And we have got a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, and ready to answer the phone when you call on in. Okay, let's deal with this Oprah thing because everybody went ballistic when NBC, following Oprah's 9-minute speech at the Golden Globes, and NBC said she could run for president, and everybody was saying, huzzah, huzzah. A lot of people came down on that suggestion, including Rush Limbaugh. And Sean Spicer basically came on out and said Oprah Winfrey does not have the political experience to be president. Donald Trump came on out and said he likes Oprah. He was on her show, but he could easily defeat her in 2020, which I think that's accurate. But let's get this over and done with because apparently Oprah Winfrey has issued a statement through an intermediary that no, she has no plans of running for president in 2020. So that is over and done with. And just the idea of somebody like Oprah, and Oprah's great at what she does, but the idea of her crossing over to be president, that was a little bit absurd in the extreme. In the extreme. Now, something happened just a little while ago this morning. Dianne Feinstein has released the transcript of the testimony taken from the founder of Fusion GPS, and Chairman Grassley is just furious with what's going on. And I'm not going to read out, obviously, the whole transcript here, but there are a couple of things in there which undermine the claimed dossier. And apparently Simpson was claimed that Steele had told him the FBI had gathered intelligence from a source within the Trump campaign that supported the claims inside Steele's dossier, and then Simpson later contradicted himself and said he wasn't really sure where the second source was from. Apparently, the issue with Donald Trump's taxes, Fusion GPS did not, in fact, get all his tax returns. Mostly they were looking at tax returns of some of his properties. And there's a lot more in there, but basically Chaffetz is very angry at Feinstein, and he tweeted out this tweet about the outright hypocrisy. And he tweeted, Senator Feinstein, love your newfound commitment to transparency since it was non-existent on Fast and Furious, Benghazi, IRS, Clinton emails, DEA, IRS, Homeland Security, etc. And he's absolutely right. And obviously Feinstein leaked this out to try and damage Trump some more. Trump is under constant attack. And we all know that the Oval Office is the hottest kitchen in the world. But really, it's getting absurd between Feinstein's leak of the transcript, the book Fire and Fury, which is already discredited, but it's made Michael Wolff a pile of money. They're making a big deal over the fact that Donald Trump wasn't as alert as some people thought he might be when he was singing the national anthem at a sporting event. You know, he is overworked and he's a little tired, and he is 71 here. But they're out there saying, see, it proves he's got Alzheimer's like his father. Now, WikiLeaks has released a document showing that Hillary Clinton's chief of staff, John Podesta, received an email from an advisor which brought up the phrase gross negligence in regards to the FBI's email investigation, before the FBI agent in charge of the probe edited the document to change it to extreme carelessness. See, the phrase gross negligence appears literally within Title 18. But by changing it to extreme carelessness, they said, well, see, it doesn't apply. She wasn't grossly negligent. She was extremely careless. Frankly, the two sound pretty much the same to me. But that cover-up is starting to unravel. And you can almost smell a sense of panic starting to grow within the FBI rank and file, the Department of Justice, Comey, even Loretta Lynch. They're starting to understand that while they might evade trial, their careers are pretty much going to be over after all of this comes on out. Now, turning on over to Russiagate, it's turning into a classic case of hoisting with one's own petard. And for those of you who don't know what that expression means, I got an email the other day about this. During medieval combat, when Marco Polo had brought gunpowder back from China, they tried to develop weapons with it, and before they were able to produce actual gun barrels and cannonballs, they had a weapon called a petard. It was a breaching weapon, and basically it was a large metal bowl, very often a captured bell from the local church, and it would be loaded up with gunpowder and a fuse, and it would be hoisted on a crane so that the mouth of the bell was against the gates of the city you were trying to enter. And then some poor, unlucky soldier would be required to sit on top of this contraption while it was being hoisted up, shield over his head to keep the rocks from hitting him, and then he would touch it off with a torch. And usually in the process, he was blown to bits, hence the phrase hoisting with your own petard. Well, that same imagery is starting to apply to Russiagate, because it is backflashing, backfiring on all the people who put it together. A year of investigation by Robert Mueller has found zero evidence of any collusion. His last desperate gasp is going to try to interview Donald Trump and goad him into saying something that could be construed as an admission of guilt. But basically what's going on, William Binney, former high-level National Security Agency official, has come on out and said, if there was any evidence of a Trump-Putin conspiracy to steal the U.S. presidential election, the NSA would have it. And yet there is no evidence. So now the dossier has come apart, the whole Russiagate story has come apart, and everybody understands that the candidate who was colluding with Russia was Hillary Clinton on that Uranium One deal. And all the corporate media, all the prostitutes, all the correspondents basically were trying to cover for Hillary and manufacture out of thin air a reason for Trump to be impeached. Oh, he stole the election from our darling Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was doing all the vote fraud. Just ask Bernie Sanders. We had millions of illegal immigrants voting Democrat. We had tremendous indications of election fraud. I mean, when Trump dissolved the Election Integrity Commission, the reason given was none of these state political parties would turn over the voting information. Or the voters' commissions in the states refused to provide the information. Really? What have you got to hide? And look how they're still opposed to any kind of voter ID. We've got to get that at least up front. Or the Democrats will steal Congress this fall, and they'll kick Trump out of the White House, and they'll steal the elections in 2020. It's a real problem. We're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network here. Rush Limbaugh came on out and basically denounced Michael Wolff's book, Fire and Fury, saying that Wolff's reference to Rush Limbaugh is 100% false. And Rush was also commenting on Russiagate, saying that it's the biggest political scandal of his lifetime. I would say it's close. It's definitely up there in the top 10. But I think the real top political scandal is yet to be revealed, and it is what Hillary was really doing with that email server and that charitable foundation. Now, over at CNN, even Jake Tapper is admitting Fire and Fury is full of errors. So this one has flamed out. But, of course, the liberals are out there reading the book, buying the book, and choosing to believe every word in it. It's confirmation bias. They're looking for anything that confirms their pre-existing bias. Okay. Now, Elliot Spitzer is back in the news, and apparently there is a prostitute who previously had an ongoing affair with the former New York governor, and basically she has gone to the police department in New York claiming Spitzer threatened her life, and apparently she has an audio tape of the phone call in which Spitzer threatened her. This comes under the category of what kind of people seek high political office. Well, apparently the FBI probe into this 2010 property deal orchestrated by Jane Sanders, who's the wife of Senator Bernie Sanders, has escalated after a report by, apparently they've impaneled a grand jury, and at least one witness has already given sworn testimony in the case. So life is heating up for the Sanders as well. Okay, now, Russia has responded to the claims made by CIA Director Pompeo that Russia has been meddling in the U.S. elections. And their official spokesman, Zakharova, basically came on out and said, the way we know this is a total lie is that the U.S. never made any statements about Russia meddling in the election until Trump won. It just wasn't there. And basically, the U.S. is looking for a villain because they see the election as a major problem. The Republicans lost control of their own party, and Republicans don't like to lose control. And, of course, the Democrats were absolutely convinced Hillary Clinton was going to be the next president, and they could relax about any further investigations about Uranium One or the email server or the Clinton Foundation. And they didn't get that. And so they see the Trump victory as a defeat, and they're looking for enemies to line up with him. Whether it's Russia meddling in the election or the Trump-Russia collusion story, it's just demonize Trump, demonize Russia over and over and over again. And at this point, they're burning it out. Ordinary people aren't even paying attention anymore. They've been hearing it for an entire year. Trump-Russia collusion coming from the corporate media. Show me the proof. Mueller admits they have no proof. There is no proof. And I agree with William Binney. If there had been any communications between the Trump campaign and officials in Russia, the NSA would have copies of it. Because they copy everything that goes over a border and pretty much everything that's going on inside the United States as well. Which makes me wonder if the NSA has copies of all of Hillary Clinton's deleted emails. Now, for those of you living out in Arizona, a little bit of good news. Sheriff Joe Arpaio is running for the Senate, and he's going to be running in the fall election. The news is coming from David Drucker of the Washington Examiner. And basically, he's running for the seat vacated by Republican Jeff Flake. So, those of you in Arizona, Joe strikes me as a good guy. Maybe they all started as good people, and they get to Washington, D.C., and there's something in the water that turns them into these monsters. I'm not sure. We'll see. All right, we're going to talk about the war zones now because there's a lot going on out there. Over in Syria, somebody launched a major coordinated drone attack against one of the Russian bases. And apparently the drones, for the most part, were intercepted by missiles. 3 of them were hijacked electronically and brought down. So they're going to be able to take the drones apart and see where they originated. But it does represent a major escalation in terms of the weaponry available to the U.S.-backed Syrian rebels. Now, on January 8th and 9th, government forces recaptured all these villages. And, yeah, they're doing great over there. They're doing really, really good. Now, getting on back to the drone attack. It was a first-of-its-kind attack, multiple drones at the same time. And Russian military experts are analyzing the drones. And apparently the drones were not of a nature to normally carry weapons. So they had improvised explosives attached to them. These may have been modified reconnaissance drones. But apparently there was a total of 13 that were launched from at least 50 kilometers away. So that's really heating up over there. Now the Syrian army is reporting that Israel staged a missile attack on greater Damascus. Israel attacked targets near the war-torn nation's capital with jets and ground-to-ground missiles earlier today, causing damage. Now, over in Turkey, as you know, following the failed 2016 coup attempt against Erdogan, Erdogan declared a state of emergency, which, among other things, allows Erdogan and his cabinet to just write new laws and bypass the parliament, and, of course, to limit rights and freedoms and civil protections. About 50,000 people have been arrested since the state of emergency began. 150,000 have lost their jobs in the military, public, and private sectors. The state of emergency was due to expire about now. Erdogan has extended it for another 3 months. Now, over in Iran, their Deputy Foreign Minister, Abbas Araghchi, has basically said the world has to get ready for the United States to withdraw from the P5+1 nuclear deal. And the Deputy Foreign Minister made these remarks in an address to the second panel of Tehran Security Conference on Monday. And, of course, everybody in Iran is speculating about Donald Trump's likely withdrawal from the nuclear agreement. And he's made a lot of comments recently. The word that we're getting out of the White House is that he will not recertify the deal the next time it comes due. And so all this attention on Iran, oh, Iran is this and Iran is that. They've been screaming about Iran being weeks away from nuclear weapons for the last 30 years. But Iran's real crime, according to this article that came out of Counterpunch, it won't bow down. It won't bow down and do what the United States and Israel tell it to do. That's the real issue. They won't accept private central banking. They want to sell their oil for a currency they choose. They just want to live their lives and be left alone. And that's the real issue right there. They've got a very large country, a good population. It's very comfortable there. And they represent a political power in the Middle East that rivals that of Israel and of Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia and Israel, even though there are no formal relations between the two countries, appear to be cooperating to bring more pressure to bear on Iran. Now, I would have a word of advice for our Saudi friends. If you help Israel remove Iran as a political influence in the region, don't you understand Israel will then turn on you and remove you as a political influence in the region? It's amazing how short-sighted some leaders can actually be in their thinking. Now, Norman Finkelstein has a new book out, Gaza, An Inquest into Martyrdom, and he's being interviewed about the book. And one of the comments that he made is that Israeli propagandists have wildly exaggerated Hamas' arsenal and threat, and they're also exaggerating the effectiveness of the Iron Dome missile defense system, which we already know because of how many of those missiles they have to fire off to hit just one of those bottle rockets coming in from Gaza. Weapons makers always overstate the capability of weapons, and the governments that pay so much money for them always overstate the effectiveness. We saw that in the Iraq War with the Patriot missile. We've got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Once again, if you would like to support Republic Broadcasting, pardon me, still on the tail end of this bug that I've been dealing with, the postal address to send a check or money order is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. If you want to phone in and become a recurring subscriber to Republic Broadcasting, the number is 800-724-2719, extension 03. All right, so we were talking about how Norman Finkelstein is saying in his book and in his interviews that Hamas threat is being exaggerated greatly by Israeli propagandists, along with the effectiveness of the Iron Dome missile defense system. Now, the Iron Dome is a ground-to-air interceptor system whose development was in part financed by the American taxpayer. And Israel is now marketing these Iron Dome systems around the world, but they may not work all that well. And we went through that with the Patriot missile during the Iraq War, the big Iraq War. And that was, we were being told that the Patriot was 90% effective, 98% effective, in fact, was the word. Then, when a lot of Scud missiles started hitting their targets, everybody hemmed and hawed and said, well, it's actually closer to 50%. And then after the war was all over and people were actually looking at what had gone on, they deduced that Patriot, at least the version of Patriot being used for the Iraq War, had about a 10% hit rate, which is very, very poor performance. But so I guess the modern problems they're having with our weapons, the F-22, the F-35, the Zumwalt, it's been an ongoing problem all along. The defense contractors will build these very shoddy products. They'll rig the tests to get it past the military procurement people, and everybody makes a lot of money and goes home happy. And again, if you want some insight into how this all works, there's a book and a very funny movie called The Pentagon Wars that more or less tells the story of the development of the Bradley infantry fighting vehicle. And I understand the movie is out there on Hulu and Netflix, so if you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth a look. It's a very enjoyable film here. Meanwhile, more on that, well, I guess Israel is shooting in all directions now. They've been shooting missiles up toward Damascus, and apparently what Israel did is they're flying in Lebanon airspace, and they targeted what they claim is a Hezbollah arms depot in Syria. So Israel's just basically shooting at Syria. I believe that qualifies as an act of war. And, of course, Israel would love it if Syria were to fire back, because then Israel could say, yeah, it's a war, and the U.S. would have yet another excuse to invade Syria. Meanwhile, over in Palestine, Israel is really turning up the heat on the refugees. As you know, following Donald Trump's announcement that he recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, there were a lot of protests. And Israel has cracked down on the protests very hard. Now, Trump is saying he's going to cut off funding to the Palestinian Authority, which is Israel's tool, if you will, to keep some measure of control over Gaza and the West Bank. And now Netanyahu is out there saying that he wants to destroy the United Nations relief agency for the Palestinians. In other words, cut off even more money from them, starve them to death. Now, the good news is that apparently Israel is going to turn the electricity back on full time, because that did not go over well in the international community. Now, we all remember the former government of South Africa, the apartheid regime, and the abuses that they had. And as world protests against apartheid began to mount, South Africa published a blacklist of organizations that would not be allowed into South Africa because they were just there to try and take photos and videos of the living conditions of the black population and just stir up trouble. Well, Israel has now copied that model. Israel and the former government of South Africa were very close. In fact, Israel almost sold the former government of South Africa a nuclear weapon. That documentation surfaced after the former government fell. But Israel has now issued a blacklist of organizations that will not be allowed into Israel, let alone Palestine, because of their support for the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. And what's really ironic is that on this list is the American Friends Service Committee, AFSC, was founded 101 years ago. They're on the blacklist for wanting to help Palestinians. And the irony there is that they were once honored by Yad Vashem for their helping of Jews during World War II in Germany. So not much gratitude there coming on back. We're going to take another break for commercials. Join us on the air, 800-313-9443, and we'll be right back after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to take some telephone calls now, and we're going to start with Russell in Perth. Aloha, Russell. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How you doing, mate?
Doing great.
I just want to say I really love your show. Actually, you're one of the reasons it's helping me to get rid of anti-Americanism. A lot of people in Australia especially really not too happy about things, the way things are going. And most Australians sort of see that this is Americans sort of like wanting this to happen, especially with Trump. I mean, I was with you, buddy. I definitely was. And a lot of us were. I mean, no one wanted Clinton, unless you were drunk and maybe had a lot of drugs. But he's really not fulfilling, and we're sort of like, I mean, I understand, you know, from American perspective, you want your country to be better, and hey, man, we're all for that, especially in Australia. But this foreign policy that's going on, it's just, you know, we're all starting to get a bit edgy.
Well, the neocons are back in control, unfortunately, and it's certainly true that ordinary Americans are sick and tired of all the warmongering that's been going on. It's now, 17 years? The United States has been making war on all of these other countries longer than we were in big mistake number 1 and big mistake number 2. Certainly, ordinary Americans are not behind this. They're not supportive of it. That message does need to get out, and I'm glad that it is getting out. We're talking not about the American people, but the actions of a few individuals in government.
Well, it definitely is. Like, as I pointed out to many of my colleagues, that, you know, only so many voted in the last election. So it's not like American people are all for this. And this is this is your show. I love it. I keep trying to push it to my fans because, well, we are down south, and we are sort of like I think we're sort of like a substitute nation to America. I don't know. Our government pretty much does. I mean, you talk about Israel, which is funny, because we're like the Israel to America in Australia, and Australia is sort of like, I know that's why I think that's starting to like your show that I've been showing us, because you want your nation back, you know, and like Australia, you know, we used to yell and scream and Aussie, Aussie, Aussie sort of thing, you know, that's a proud thing about being yourself.
Yes.
You know, it doesn't matter about what it is, you know, the game or whatever it is, but you know, that sort of, you know, feeling for yourselves, the influx and all that. I mean, in Australia, I live in Western Australia, which is like way over on the east. In fact, you know where Western Australia is, don't you?
Oh, yes, I do. I mean, I've only visited Eastern Australia. I went down to Sydney, actually North Sydney, to work on some computer animation projects many years ago, and I really liked it.
Really?
Yeah. And I really liked it. I understand that the Sydney subway system isn't what it was back then. I guess it's from too much crowding coming on in. But when Claire and I were there, we really did enjoy it.
Oh, well, that's good because, hey, if I had the money, mate, I'd just tell you to lead wherever you have.
Yeah, we want to get off this rock.
We need you over here.
We want to get off this rock before the bombs start flying here. I still have my boomerang. Unfortunately, my kangaroo pelt has rotted away.
We need you in Australia.
Okay.
You're fantastic. Like, I love the show. There was something. The thing is, the problem isn't like there's a lot of other stuff that's been talked about going down here, and it really isn't like religion and all that, or race and all that. What it is that we're all losing touch with what we used to be about.
Yeah, I understand that political correctness has come to Australia as well, and everybody's talking about all the different genders and everything.
Very, very bad idea.
Okay, well, Russell, listen. Russell, I'm sorry to cut you short, but we've got other callers waiting on the line, and thank you very much. G'day. Fair dinkum, and thank you for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Dustin in New Jersey. Dustin, thank you for being patient and waiting. What's on your mind today?
Yeah, hi, Mike. Hey, I wonder if Russell can call in tomorrow and let us know if there's a refugee crisis over where he lives in Australia. Because I know they got a refugee crisis also, don't they?
Well, I do, but I think it's confined to the larger cities on the eastern part of Australia. Again, I saw an article that Sydney's subway system is just jam-packed to the point where the subway operators are asking people to try and find another way home during rush hour. It certainly was not the case when I was down there. The subway ran, it wasn't crowded, so I would say that probably there's been a huge influx of refugees and immigrants into Sydney.
Yeah, look at Spain, Mike. I mean, they're going to put the refugees in like an abandoned prison. I mean, it's no. You know what? You would say they have no common sense, but these people are not stupid, all of them. So they're either their plan backfired or there's another plan. You know, I don't know.
The plan is globalism. The plan is the New World Order. The plan is the one world government and the one world private central bank. And to get there, they're trying to blend everybody together so that there's no longer a clear indication of this is Germany and this is France and this is Spain. It's just all one mush. And it's causing all kinds of problems for those countries. And Brussels is just standing firm. So is Angela Merkel, even though it may cost her her job in the very near future. And it's a fight between the globalists and the nationalists.
And Mike, I'm going to switch gears to Yemen. I don't know if you talked about the F-15 that got, you know, Mike, I know there's missiles with warheads, obviously, that hit their target, but remember that movie Behind Enemy Lines?
Yes.
Now, aren't there missiles where it shoots shrapnel out? Oh,
there's all kinds of missiles. It depends on the target that they're designed to hit. Most ground-to-air interceptors, they'll shoot shrapnel or they'll shoot out this expanding ring of wire. It's kind of like this accordion zigzag, and it's packed in around the explosive fill, and it slices out because at high altitude, the force of the actual explosion just doesn't carry that far in the thin air. But that cutting rod will slice into the airplane and cut hydraulic lines and so forth. The Stinger, I believe, uses basically steel balls, and it aims, obviously, at the engine to cause a rotor failure.
You think that's what got hit? You think it was a Stinger that hit the F-15? I don't know if it crashed, but it looked like it did get hit from the footage. It was trying to shoot out a couple flares. They didn't work.
Okay, well, then it was obviously evading an infrared guided missile, which would be like a Stinger or the equivalent being made by other countries.
Like an SA-9 from
Something like that.
From the former Soviet Union.
Yep.
Yeah, because it did look like it got hit. It definitely looked like it got hit. Might have made it back, but I don't know how it's going to land, or if it did land, or the pilot ejected. But yeah, man. I mean, you know, people don't realize the Yemenis, they're a warrior race. You know,
yeah, they're tough
Saudis
people.
are not going to win.
They're tough people.
And yeah, I just feel bad for how the blockade's going and how just the world. I don't even see anything on the news about it, although I don't watch the news, but I flipped through it, and there's not even a peep of it, Mike. I mean, nobody gives a, they don't care.
No, well,
they just don't
corporate
care.
media is just all agog about Oprah Winfrey running for president in 2020, which is not going to happen, but they're still making big news out of it. They're focusing on Trump's immigration debate, and he still wants his wall. But, yeah, all this other stuff that's out there that the U.S. government is doing, it's not being reported.
Yeah, I mean, I voted for Trump. You know, I mean, I'm a Democrat, but I would have liked different candidates because they're obviously both flawed. You know, obviously Hillary's the most flawed. But, I mean, can you imagine Rosie O'Donnell on the stage against Oprah in a debate? I mean, I thought we reached the bottom of the barrel the last election. I mean, if that's the case, then, I mean, Mike, this ain't America no more. It's United States of Empire. It's basically breads and circuses. If they get on stage, oh my, Mike, we're a laughing stock already.
Yeah, we already are. Well,
can you imagine?
Basically, people think we're strange and weird. They don't dare laugh because they're also scared of us.
All we need is now a one-legged midget, transgender, on the stage with Rosie and Oprah. It's one of them will probably get elected.
Probably, or they'll steal the election for them. Anything else,
all right,
Dustin?
Thanks, Mike.
All right, we'll let you go.
That's
then.
it. Thanks.
All right. Getting back to the wars here, as you know, Donald Trump made a point of cutting back on the foreign aid going to Pakistan, saying that Pakistan has not been effective in defeating terrorism inside their country. And Pakistan, of course, is very upset over that, saying that responding to Trump's comment about lies and deceit in exchange for that $33 billion. But there may be something else going on here, and we have to take a careful look. If you think back to the run-up to the war in, well, let's just take Iraq. There have been so many. We saw the same kind of antagonistic steps taking place. Just a push here, a push there. And so I think we have to wonder, is there now a plan to foment a regime change in Pakistan now? Are they getting ready to basically go on in? Which is rather amazing when you realize we can't handle the wars we've already got. They're not going well at all. And they're going to start another one? It's amazing. All right, let's talk about Korea. Now, obviously, everybody is delighted that the tone between North and South Korea itself appears to be softening, and that is a good thing. They've had some talks over the hotlines. They're going to have a face-to-face meeting, imminently, in fact. The U.S. announced they were not going to conduct any more drills with Japan or North Korea until after the Olympics, which are next month. And North Korea is going to be sending Olympic athletes, which is great. It looks really good. There's only one small wrinkle, and that is that the United States just deployed an aircraft carrier group, the USS Carl Vinson, and it's heading out to the Western Pacific to basically just hang off the Korean Peninsula. So it's a mixed message. We're not going to have any drills, but the weapons are still sitting there just in case. Now, there's an article that appeared in Sputnik News which raises another possible explanation for the last 17 years of militant action. And again, wars are never fought for just one reason. Assassinations are never carried out for one reason. There are always a group of overlapping interests and agendas. And when they overlap over war or assassination, that's when it happens. But Sputnik News is putting out the possibility that one of the reasons, and possibly a major reason, for all of the U.S. Stirring up trouble all over the globe is simply to increase U.S. arms sales. And apparently the White House is getting ready to release a new Buy America plan that will instruct U.S. military attachés and diplomats to more aggressively push foreign governments to buy American-made weapons. I imagine that Russia will instruct their diplomats to do the same. And considering the recent performance of American weapons, I don't know how well that's going to work out. Now, speaking of America's weapons and problems thereof, apparently over at Peterson Air Force Base there is an evolving problem where a lot of the people who work there keep coming down with cancer. Not once, not twice, but like 3 times. And apparently concern is being raised that some of the fire suppression foam being used contains chemicals that are causing cancers and also, when released into the environment, result in underweight births. Now, the fact is that military bases are not always all that careful about environmental concerns, and a lot of that goes back to a lawsuit. You've probably heard about Area 51. For the longest time, it was top secret. The American people didn't even know it existed out there in the Nevada desert. And the staff who worked there would fly out of Las Vegas Airport on a privately owned airline, and they would work on the top secret projects there. And in the process, they got exposed to some very toxic, dangerous chemicals, and one of the workers there died as a result of that exposure. And his family sued. The government tried to come on in and say, you can't sue us, we're the government. But eventually they got to court. And it was in that court case that the existence of Area 51 first became public knowledge. Of course, the Russians had known it was there all along. All right, let's talk about the economic news a little bit. Everyone's still talking about Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies in general. And a lot of people are worried about the soaring Bitcoin. Has it become a bubble? And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. My concern with all of the cryptocurrencies is that, like the Federal Reserve note, there's no commodity base under it to support it if things start to turn bad. So there's this article over in Zero Hedge saying that Bitcoin isn't the bubble, the global financial system is. And they are absolutely correct. With all the market manipulation of the stock market, the bond market, it is bubbled up. More about that when we come back from these words from our sponsor. Hi, America. Welcome back to the show here. And breaking news, Steve Bannon is stepping down as chairman of Breitbart. And apparently it's all over the comments that he was quoted as saying in that book, Fire and Fury. I still can't figure out how that came about. Steve Bannon, as a media person, he knows there's no such thing as off the record. It just does not happen. And so I'm very curious, what, was he drunk, stoned? But apparently he's acknowledged he actually did say those things. That was very, very reckless. Okay, we're getting word that the meeting between the North Korean and South Korean negotiators is ongoing. It's taking place at what's called the Peace House in the Joint Security Area, Panmunjom, the Truce Village. And it's basically the only place along the DMZ where North and South Korea actually come together. And it's sort of a no man's zone, a checkpoint Charlie kind of thing where everybody can get together. So that's looking better and better it's looking better and better over there. Okay. Now there's another cryptocurrency out there, and it's called FM tokens. And it was specifically set up as a means for paying for online chats with porn performers. And apparently, Monday, the investors are starting to look for the company's CEO, and apparently the CEO has just vanished with all their money. And, of course, the tokens were not promised. So you've got to be careful. We're in an age of massive fraud, not just by the government, by money junkies. And you've got to be careful. Of course, anybody with an email account knows how much scam and fraud and abuse there is going about right now. Now, for everybody who says that they think or they believe the economy is improving, the reality is going the other way. Chapter 11 filings are soaring. C&I lending growth has stalled. Those are bad signs that we may be going into yet another recession before we've even really gotten out of the last one. Now, Gail Tverberg is out there talking about a coming depression in energy and basically says it is a simple issue to understand. Too many people placing too much demand on the world's depleting energy resources. And the cost of energy is rising, and the war fever is not helping that at all. Now, one of the things that we might get out of a revitalized space program is more efficient electronics, so that your appliances, your computers, and so forth use less electricity. If you're using less electricity, demand goes down. The other side of it, of course, is maybe it is time to mount a Manhattan Project-sized operation to develop new sources of energy, new sources of electricity primarily. We know that something was going on with cold fusion, not exactly sure what. China has made great strides in the area of hot fusion. It's out there. We just have to have the political will to go find it. We're going to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. Hi, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And let's talk a little bit about Europe and immigration and politics. And there's a new phrase going around, Germany, Merkel madness, or its German equivalent. And Germany is really starting to see some very negative effects from the refugee crisis, because the Germany that I experienced back in the 1980s was a pretty cool place. Very beautiful, very neat, not very crowded, and very little crime. That apparently has all changed. And this article that came out of Europeans worldwide is saying that what people would have considered normal German life is fast disappearing. And it's gotten so bad there, a lot of Germans are now leaving Germany. They're going to Hungary and Poland to escape the rampant refugee violence gripping Germany's cities. Now, Greece has suffered a calamitous 41% drop in tourism as a consequence of this invasion by non-European benefit bandits. Another cool expression. Germany's tourist sector is looking at a huge drop as well. And private properties in the hotel and leisure sector have been commandeered by the state to accommodate the refugees. It really is out of control. And the reason for it all, again, New World Order. One world government, one world private central bank, and get everybody confused about who they are, so that there's no more group of Germans over here and no more group of French over there. And by the way, it's not going to work. And we learned that from the immigration era in the United States, where people were coming to the United States, they were coming through Ellis Island, they were checked for diseases, they were checked for criminal records, and they were let into the country, and it was expected they would integrate with the society, which they tended to do. But they still formed their own little enclaves, Little Italy, Chinatown, Koreatown, that sort of thing. And these refugees in Europe and the United States are doing the same thing. You can't just blur people together like that and expect it to work. Contrary to what a lot of the globalists think, we are not sheep, and we want the freedom to choose who we associate with. And we're most comfortable associating with people that we grew up with, who have the same sets of values, who think the same way that we do, who know the same history that we do. Now, yesterday we reported on how Theresa May is looking to shuffle her cabinet, and some people are going to be replaced, others are being moved around. It's already starting to go cattywampus. Jeremy Hunt refuses to change his job. He wants to stay where he is. And Putney, member of Parliament, has quit the government rather than move. So Theresa May is in trouble over there. All this chaos going on from all this empire building here. Now, as you know, Benjamin Netanyahu is facing corruption charges in Israel, and he's trying to hold them off by political means, by a special law that was passed by the Knesset. But the public pressure from the Israelis is growing that something has to be done. They don't like corrupt rulers any more than Americans do. And so there is a huge pressure building up right now, and it's been exacerbated by Netanyahu's son, who apparently didn't understand that silence is golden. And apparently Yair Netanyahu tells the son of an Israeli gas tycoon that his father, Benjamin, pushed that controversial gas deal in Parliament in favor of the father in 2015. Apparently this was recorded outside a strip club, and the audio track of the video has been aired on local news in Israel. And so basically here what you have is the son of Benjamin Netanyahu admitting the corruption took place. I would certainly hate to be at the dinner table in that house that night. We're going to take a phone call now. Tom in Florida, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, yeah, Michael, good day to you. Yeah, what's on my mind, Michael, is this Trump's going to probably cave in on this DACA nonsense, because I saw it was on the news today with him in one of the cabinet rooms there in the White House with Chucky Smucky Schumer. You had, I think it was Dickie Durbin and Steny Little Hoyer. And it seems to me that Donald Trump, and I give Trump some credit, he was trying to stick up, the best he could, but I didn't hear none of the other Republicans actually come to his defense and say, no, we're not going to give you DACA until you do build the wall and deport them all. And nothing like that. It's all about what the Democrats want. And you got these rhino rats. I call them rhino rats now because the rhino rats are shutting their mouths and letting Trump, like he's the bad guy. This is insanity and how they're spinning all this.
In the eyes of the Republican establishment, Trump is the bad guy. They lost control of their own party last year, and they don't like that. That's a big reason why so many Republicans don't like Trump. He's not theirs.
Well, Michael, this guy Kevin McCarthy was standing right next to Hoyer, and I was saying, hey, why don't you speak up, McCarthy? Speak up. His state has been flooded with 4.5 million illegals that they know of. We don't know how many more it is. You couldn't get a Republican elected as a dog catcher in Sacramento, and you got this moonbeam clown who should be arrested with federal marshals because this guy's breaking all the federal statutes of aiding and abetting illegal aliens, but yet they don't want in the sanctuary cities. They don't arrest these guys. But here you got the president of the United States. I don't know why Trump, with the presidency, he can force the federal marshals to go get Brown and put him under a house arrest for what he's doing. If it was a Democrat in power and it was the Republicans trying to pull that, they would have him arrested. Now, what I want to see Trump do before he does this nonsense with DACA, because that's given 800, 900 million more Democrats votes, this is insanity all across the board. I want to see some of these Republicans have some gonads or cojones and say enough is enough. Because, Michael, this is not – Ronald Reagan tried it. Look what happened. Now you can have Donald Trump, like Pat Buchanan said the other day, he's going to cave in. He's going to cave in like a little bitch. And it's disgraceful because the Republicans are not backing Trump. He may get the funding for the wall, but they're still going to keep pouring in here, Michael, no matter how the visas and all. It's just insanity. Matter of fact, Michael, they don't want to come here to learn English, really.
No, they're coming on in with this attitude of if there's enough of them, it will change this country into their country. It's a demographic invasion, if you will. And, I don't think Trump's wall is going to work. I was opposed to it. I think it's cheaper to put crocodiles in the Rio Grande. But seriously, if you want to stop the abuse of the immigration system, you start enforcing the immigration laws. And that means people who aid and abet, give shelter or transportation or employment to an illegal immigrant goes to jail. And you start doing that, and you will cut off that financial incentive for the illegals to cross that border.
Absolutely. Michael, they had a guy here in the Florida area who was talking on the radio the other day, and he was bringing up statistics of the 1900 statistics in the early 1900s. And in 1900, 54% of all males in the United States have blue eyes. You know how many blue-eyed males there are in the United States at this time? 15, 16%. Unbelievable. I'm not going to get into that. I won't get into that real heavy stuff with the blue eyes and all, or whatever, green eyes, whatever. But I will say this. There is a modus operandi since 1965 with this Kennedy and this Manny Cuellar to literally destroy the Northern European base in the United States. And you had I don't know, you call him what they call him, a dark black Irish Kennedy, who's tried to sabotage the European structure of this country.
I don't think I disagree with you about Kennedy. I disagree with you about Kennedy. You know,
I looked at the bill, Michael, 1965 immigration bill. You need to check it out. Kennedy was behind it with that guy Cuellar, and he was totally for flooding the country with third world invasion. Kennedy's a big perpetrator of that. Trust me.
All right, I'll take a look at that. I'll take a look at that. I mean, I know that in the past, bringing in people from the third world has been encouraged because it's a cheap labor force. And I'm sure that's at least one of the agendas that's at work now. But back then, we needed the labor force. Right now, we've got too many laborers, and they're not working, and it's cracking the system right now. But again,
there's only 1.2.
Sorry,
there's only 1.2 million people in the agriculture industry. I looked it up. There's only 1.2 million people actually work in the agriculture industry in the United States. So where are all these other millions of people doing? Cutting grass? Cutting trees down? I don't know.
Well, I don't know, but most of them are trying to get free benefits. The agriculture is no longer the main destination for immigrant labor because it's all been mechanized. It's all done with machines now instead of by hand.
Absolutely. Matt Drudge was talking about that on his Drudge report the other day. About what do you need all this labor? Because machinery and the robots are going to be taking over in the next 50 years. You don't even need nobody basically to do any of that stuff. It's insanity. All it is, Michael, I can say, I know your other callers, look, it's all about flooding the Democratic voter rolls so they can keep electing all these people have their little cushy jobs and they don't want to lose them in the future. They're afraid of losing their power and their money that they got coming for the next 10, 15 years. Hell with their kids and grandkids and all that, They just want to hold on to their power. Look at this McCain. He should have stepped down as soon as he found out he had a brain problem. He's got to step down. This guy cost us the health care bill. I mean, the lame brain, insane McCain. And he's going around. He's a war hero. He wasn't a war hero, Michael. He was caught and put in a box and probably ratted like a rat fool. Who knows what?
He made propaganda recordings for the North Vietnamese. They actually got released. They're out there on the web.
Absolutely. So thank you, Michael, for taking my call. Have a great day.
All right, same to you. We're going to let you go.
Over the best.
All right. I don't agree that there has been a deliberate plan intending to reduce the European culture in the United States. I think the motives for open border immigration are a cheap labor force, and today, of course, it's part of that New World Order destroying the national identity of the entire country, destroying the regional identity, the historical identity, the cultural identity. Just blur it all together to make us easier to control. We're going to do a shout out now to our honor affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Now, Donald Trump has apparently signed a bill to make Martin Luther King's birthplace a national park. And he signed this on Air Force One, and Alveda King, the Martin Luther King's niece, was in attendance for it. So they're basically going to use this bill. It will include the Martin Luther King National Historic Site. It will also include the Prince Hall Masonic Temple, the former site of the Southern Christian Leadership Conferences, where the civil rights movement really began back in the 1960s. All right, let me... Now this story, again, the kind of people drawn to power. He still is, but he was the chief of police for the small western town of Leechburg, Pennsylvania. 40-year-old man was arrested after arranging a sexual tryst with what he thought was a 14-year-old girl. Now, the teenager was actually an undercover officer from the Pennsylvania Bureau of Criminal Investigations. And Michael Diebold was charged with 2 first-degree felonies, unlawful contact with a minor, and criminal attempt to commit involuntary deviant sexual intercourse. And he's in jail on a $500,000 bond. His lawyer says he's going to plead not guilty at his bail hearing. Unfortunately, this guy has a wife and a family, and they have just been destroyed by all this. Apparently, they had no idea that this guy was behaving this way. So, okay. And here's another one, and I hate stories like this. Apparently, a man who worked at a school and coached track has pled guilty to sexually abusing 42 underage boys. The problem is this man is HIV positive, and he knows he was HIV positive. Talk about a complete lack of a sense of responsibility. You know, when AIDS first came to the United States, there was this Canadian flight attendant, Gaitan, I think was his name. And he knew he had the illness, but every city that he had a layover in, he'd go down to the local bathhouse and meet somebody and have sex. And this one guy, he was the patient zero. This one guy, it just spread it literally all over Canada and the United States of America. I hope that there's a law someplace saying that if you are carrying a deadly disease and you knowingly and willingly infect somebody else with it, that's tantamount to manslaughter. We're going to go ahead and take a phone call. We're going to talk to Al in Canada. Aloha, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Actually, I just want to chime in for a second about what you just said about that guy that was going across America and Canada. Actually, we do have laws up here that do charge people with some type of criminal charge concerning that sort of thing. Well, it's happened here in the city where I live, where a couple of people had been doing that sort of thing, and yeah, they were busted. Anyway, the last caller, like, I'm not going to say I don't think he's racist or anything. I'm not going to call him racist, but if someone were to listen to your radio show for like the first time and hear something about, well, you know, in the 50s, the amount of people with blue eyes in the United States was 50%, and now it's only 17%. I mean, that sounds really, really racist. In other countries,
it really does. I'm not even sure it's accurate because I'm not even sure it's accurate because that's not my memory from when I was a kid. I didn't see that many blue-eyed people. And, of course, anytime you start talking about blue eyes, the first association that comes to mind is Hitler and the master race.
Yeah, and actually, you know, I'm German, and my eyes are brown, and I know for a fact that your eyes are brown because I can see them right now. And, I mean, eye color doesn't have anything to do with anything at all. I mean, I know kind of where he's pointing the finger, but, I mean, to say something like that is one thing. I mean, believe me, I'm not, and I apologize if he thinks I'm calling him a racist. I'm not. It's just that sort of thing. I mean, you shouldn't really say stuff like that. I mean, we're adults, and I mean, you have a radio talk show, and you know, it just doesn't sound right.
No, I agree with you. And if we had not had other callers waiting, I was going to mention to him the way the gene that controls eye color works is if both parents have to have blue eyes for the child to have blue eyes. If somebody with blue eyes marries somebody with brown eyes, the child will have brown eyes. And that's the way it works. So over time, blue-eyedness declines naturally.
Yeah, like my granddaughter has blue eyes, and her father had blue eyes, but my daughter has brown eyes, but she has blue eyes. It's one of those anomalies, right?
Well, it's a recessive gene because it's a recessive gene. Brown-eyed people can carry the gene for blue eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, because because I asked about it, right? And
Yeah.
I got basically the same explanation that you mentioned. But anyway, I'm not upset or anything like that. It's just like, wow.
Yeah, I was a little
what a
uncomfortable
horrible
with
thing.
that as well. I was a little uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
As well.
Anyway, I'm going to apologize if he thinks I'm pointing a finger at him. I'm not, because if I point a finger at him, I got 3 pointing back at me.
Yes.
And I don't like that. So anyway, I appreciate your time, Mike, and I hope Lady Claire's feeling better, and hope to hear from her on Friday.
Yes, she's going to be on the show Friday.
Thank
She's
you
really
very
doing much better. She still has an issue with her back injury. She coughed so hard at one point she literally threw her back out. So she had to deal with both of those. We're going to take a break here for commercials. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors with another phone call. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And the corporate media is really jumping on top of this transcript from when the founder of Fusion GPS testified before Congress. And obviously, the Trump supporters are saying it underscores the fact that dossier was a complete fiction. The Democrats are now countering with, well, it's time for all of this to go away. Why are we still getting excited about this? We all know the dossier was nonsense. Let's just, forget about it and move on. Well, the reason we're not moving on is very simple. We have to focus on who made the decision to come up with this dossier. Who paid for it? We know that Hillary Clinton's campaign paid part of it. We know the DNC paid part of it. We know that at one point the FBI threw some money into this. So that's why we have to keep looking at it. Okay, we're going to go back to the phones now. John in Rancho Cucamonga, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello there, Michael. Good to talk to you again. Your previous caller was talking about the Immigration Act of 1965.
Yes.
And he kept mentioning that Kennedy was one of the perpetrators of that act, and it wasn't clear to me whether he meant John F. Kennedy, and I thought that may have been your reluctance for accepting it. And but the truth is that it was Ted Kennedy who was pushing that particular act, along with another
that
senator.
makes a lot more sense, because Robert Kennedy was,
yes,
of course, Attorney General.
That's correct. Yeah, so Ted Kennedy, and I don't know why he didn't say that, but it stuck out like a sore thumb because I didn't know what he meant by that either. So, yeah, anyway, and as far as I never read the act when it came out in 1965. I read about the act. I was going to school in Illinois at the time, and I read a little bit about it in the Chicago Tribune, but it didn't. That was before the internet. I still haven't read the act itself, but from what I gathered, it did allow for. It was the beginning of the population from other third world countries coming into this into the United States, as opposed to Western European, Eastern European, Russian extraction type people, people with.
Well, again, back then it made economic sense to have a very low-cost workforce. That certainly doesn't apply now. And we can't even employ the American people we have here. There are no jobs for these illegal immigrants and refugees. And I do agree with Donald Trump's move to put a 5-year delay on refugees coming to this country from receiving benefits. They have to come here and stand on their own, pay their own way, find a job, work for 5 years before they can apply for welfare or anything else like that.
Well, that should go without saying. And Pat Buchanan had made that point at least 20 or 25, 30 years ago, something like that, when the patron saint of the Republican Party, St. Ronald Reagan, signed the very first amnesty in 1986, I believe it was, and turned out, it allowed in a lot more than what it was supposed to. It was several million as opposed to a couple 100,000. Yep. And anyway, the original act, though, I remember even the thinking and some of the just discussions on campus at the time, where it's going to take a long time, and all these wild-eyed projections about how we'll become a minority in our own country will never come to pass because it would take too long and so forth. Well, here we are, So anyway.
Yeah, here we are. It's a mess, and far too many times in our nation's history, we have seen politicians do something that's immediately expedient for whatever purpose they're trying to serve, and they really do not look at the long view. And we've inherited so much of our problems from short-sighted thinking done in the past. Anyway, listen, we're coming up here on a commercial break. So, John, unless you've got something else, we're going to let you go here.
No, Michael, that was the main thing I want to make the case was Ted Kennedy was behind that act.
Okay.
And I don't have any other comments on any white genocide type programs at this time, so I'll let it go at that right now. So
all right, we've got to let you go. We've got to take a break for commercials. Thank you for the phone call, and we'll be right back.
Bye.
Hello?
Hello? Oh, we're still on the air. My mistake. We changed the clock recently, and we're still on the air. And now we're coming up on the commercial break here. When we get back, we're going to have more phone calls and kind of a weird story from Porter Airlines regarding a flight to Toronto. So now it's the commercial break, and we'll be right back after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And the corporate media is still going on about Oprah in 2020. Apparently, Democrats think it's a wonderful idea. And all I can say is Oprah's already apparently issued a statement through an intermediary that she has no plans to run for president in 2020. But if she does, and Hillary is looking at 2020, then Oprah better be wearing her Kevlar undies and stay out of small suburban Washington, D.C. parks. We're going to go back to the telephones now. Tony in Puerto Rico, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. I think a better candidate in 2020 would be Joe Kennedy III. Anyway, my question is this. Yes, first of all, I'm happy to know that Claire's doing well.
Yes.
Very, very happy about that.
Thank you.
And I was watching, I was watching a program yesterday. You mentioned about they expand NASA, NASA.
Yes.
The technology will help the economy. But my question is this. If the petrodollar goes down the drain, what would happen to the American economy?
Well, right now, much of the American economy is dependent on revenue generated by other countries using our dollar to trade across borders, because those dollars are accruing interest that must eventually be repaid. If there is no more foreign demand for U.S. dollars, and we're not just talking the petrodollar, but any dollars at all for corn or wheat or grain or anything, then the U.S. economy becomes totally dependent on U.S. manufacturing and exports to other countries, and U.S. agriculture exporting to other countries. And those are two areas that have been allowed to decline. Our manufacturing has been declining in quantity and quality since the 1980s, and nobody wants our agricultural produce because of the GMO problem. So you can see they're stuck in a bit of a corner here. And the only way we're going to bring manufacturing back is we're going to have to leapfrog ahead into new technology, because our business leaders in the last couple of decades very foolishly just licensed off all of our technology to other countries to be manufactured. And it's those manufacturing jobs from a new product or a new appliance or whatever that really raise the lifestyle of the working people. And those other countries are not going to be so foolish as to allow the manufacturing of those products to come back to the United States of America. So we got to get something new going, something that is revolutionary, that only the United States is going to be able to make for a while, and we can get our manufacturing economy back with that. But we're going to have to keep that technology and those jobs here in the United States of America. What they're going to do about the GMO problem, I have no idea, because of how long that pollen can survive in the wild. That was a very poorly thought out decision there.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Good night.
All right. Thank you very much. And we're going to switch over to Fred in Nova Scotia. Thank you for waiting so patiently. Fred, what's on your mind? Okay. Did we lose Fred? Yeah.
Oh,
Fred?
no. I'm right here.
Okay. There you are. All right. What's on your mind today?
Well, a few things. One, we shouldn't all gang up on Tom like this. He does have a strong point. There is a lot of, there's a thing out there, there's a huge meme all over social media about white guilt, white privilege, when I think it's just a bunch of white guilt. There is a lot of, white people are the most targeted people in the world right now, unfortunately. Yes. And as a person that looks like he's...
For the record, I'm white, sort of white, tan. I feel no guilt.
Yeah, are you really? Okay. Well, for the record, I'm not, but I look like I am. So, okay. I can appreciate, being called a white supremacist so many times, and the fact that I'm Arab is pretty funny. And I could say that I've been in your shoes for a few seconds anyway.
Yes.
The reason why I called is because of last Thursday I went to a specialist. My left leg is pretty much blowing up like a balloon. And
okay.
I went to a specialist regarding this issue, and he told me, yeah, we're going to have to put you in a sock, a compression sock, and eventually we're going to have surgery on your leg. And I told him, well, I just bought this bottle of Extendivite, and the guy, the owner of the company told me that my veins and all the situation will be rectified eventually once the stuff, gets into my system for enough time. And the doctor, this guy, supposedly a specialist, told me, don't waste your money. It's just a placebo. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, that's your opinion, right? And he's like, but, I've never been trained in natural drugs. And I'm like, well, then why would you say that statement if you're making that other statement, And like I said, since Thursday I went to the doctors, and I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm going to start on these pills. And I really just started them that day. And since then, my leg is it was just Thursday. It's only been a few days, and I can see a huge difference in my leg.
Well, good. I'm glad it's working out for you. I'm glad it's working out for you. I got to tell you, my confidence in America's medical system has really been destroyed even further with the medical treatment that we had to seek for Claire. Because she saw several practitioners, and they were making contradictory statements and prescribing contradictory medications, and it almost seems like going to a McDonald's of medical care. And I'm glad she's doing better. We still have to deal with the back issue, but this flu was really nasty. We were talking with a bank teller who apparently got this flu like a month ago and is still not quite over it. So the malady lingers on.
Well, as you know, here in Canada we have a free health care system, but I call it death care system, because our system is not really set up to really help you. It just sort of suppress whatever problem you have, a bunch of Band-Aids here and there, and then eventually you're going to die and you're going to be one less of a statistic. It's a cynical way to look at things.
Yes.
But based on my experience here, through how they push pills, my doctor, she loves to write prescriptions. And every time I go to see her, she always has a newer, nicer car. Go figure.
Yes.
So the healthcare system, unfortunately, is pretty bad. And I'm sorry to hear that you had to go through that, but I'm glad to hear that your wife is doing much better. And I give you an update on I called a little while ago, and I told you how a social justice warrior was trying to attack my business.
Yes.
Over a comment that I made online.
Yep.
Well, I was able to remove that from my ratings, and I now have a 4.9 out of 5 star rating back onto my business. So that's a good thing.
That is a good thing. And again, there need to be more safeguards regarding deliberately malicious negative ratings that don't really rate the business. It's just somebody's way of, getting even. It's amazing the lack of a sense of responsibility that is emerging in our society in the computer age. Like that guy who's thankfully going to go to prison for the hoax SWAT call, the hoax bomb call. And
yeah, he is.
I think a lot of this is coming out of the economic evolution, where we were talking about when I was a kid. The husband went to the job and had enough money to buy a house and take care of the family, and the mother was there parenting the children, and the father was there parenting the children when he came home from work. But today, in order to even have a house, you've got both partners in the marriage are working. They're working longer hours, and our kids are being raised by TV, movies, and video games, and I think that's one of the reasons why they behave so irresponsibly.
I think it's also a lack of discipline. It's a lack of values. It's a lack of empathy. It's a lack of many things, essential values that we used to have as kids that our parents instilled in us. My dad, and I'm proudly say my dad beat me as a kid. He didn't abuse me. He beat me as a kid whenever I did something wrong. Yes. And I wouldn't be the man that I am today because of such. But I'm not allowed to beat my kids because of the way society has become. So now my kids can grow up to be spoiled brats and entitled little kids that'll think that everything is going to come to them. That's why the situation in the society has become the way it is, unfortunately. But, I mean, what can you do? I mean, look, just driving. You see how people just will push in front of you when they drive and this and this. And, I mean, it shows you, like, the reason, I mean, I'm not trying to stick up for the cops, but the reason why the cops they're just a part of the society. They're humans just like us. Mm-hmm. So they have our fuses, all of our fuses are smaller, so they can't handle dealing with people as much as they used to. Mm-hmm. Cops back in the days, you used to curse at them in their face, you call them a pig or whatever, and they'd laugh at you, and this and that. But now, good luck. Good luck trying to say anything to a cop. I mean,
well, it's
today
not just the police. It's not just the police. I mean, the liberal snowflakes. We're literally indoctrinating young people to be offended by everything. Part of that, of course, is that you start screaming, I'm offended, and some politician can say, well, if you vote for me, I will make sure you never have to deal with that thing that offends you ever again. Everybody's way too touchy. We have too many people who define their self-esteem, their sense of self-worth, by the fact that they're always able to find something to be offended by. And so it's
I'd like
a mess.
To thank you, Mike, for your push on. I mean, you're probably regretting the fact that Trump is the president, but he's still doing much better than the alternative.
Yeah, I have to say that if Hillary had won the election, things would be a lot worse for the country, probably a lot worse for Claire and I personally.
Syria wouldn't be where it is if it wasn't for him. And he didn't do anything, but the fact that he didn't do anything made it for Syria to be, and I have a beep on the other line, so I have to let you go. And I love you, Mike, and take it easy.
Thank you, and good luck with your business. We're going to switch over to Terry in California. Aloha, Terry. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, that Immigration Act of 65 y'all are talking about, I always thought it was a globalist thing to push that through. I know that there's three Zionist politicians. The main one, Jacob Javits of New York. Mm-hmm. And, of course, he might have had aid from Kennedy, because of the Zionist lobby. But after it passed, Jacob Javits was quoted as saying, open the floodgates. Let the floodgates come open. Let them in. And that's a good way to, to do what they're doing today. It's the same thing, mixing all the races together, destroying your national heritage and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, and the double standard there, and we're seeing that today in Israel. Israel wants everybody else to be multicultural, but they're working right now to get the Palestinians out and have a Jewish-only Jerusalem and a Jewish-only state. And so it's a double standard. Israel thinks everybody else should have open borders, but they're closing theirs.
Right. And if they can take Netanyahu and get him out of there for corruption, maybe they can keep going. Of course, they won't, and send him to The Hague along with Bush, Cheney, and Obama. I'd be happy.
I would like to see that as well. I really would. All right. Well, listen, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go. And very interesting story. We've been hearing a lot about how airlines have developed a very bad attitude toward passengers, at least those in coach, and they're maltreating them, giving seats away to members of Congress, literally dragging people out of a seat they paid for to make way for a deadheading crew. It really is abusive. It's almost like they're city buses with wings on them right now. So apparently over at Logan International Airport in Boston, there was a Porter Airlines passenger jet that was supposed to fly to Toronto, and there was a mechanical problem, and they sat on the runway for 2 hours on Friday night, and then they had to basically take the plane back to the terminal, and the passengers were deplaned, and the representatives of the airlines were trying to explain there was something wrong, we can't fix it till tomorrow, we're sorry about that. Some of the people were having difficulty hearing because they didn't have a PA system set up at the gate, so they took videos of the airline spokesperson explaining what was going on. And then it got kind of weird because security basically cordoned off the passengers and said, if you do not delete those videos and show that it's deleted from the trash can, you're going to be put under arrest. That's a little out there. All right, we're going to take another phone call here. Another Terry, this one in Houston. And aloha, Terry. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Sorry, we lost him. He dropped.
We lost him. He dropped. Okay, fine. Getting on another story about how abusive of ordinary people this society is becoming. Apparently, there's this lady, Dacia Hargrave. She's an English language arts teacher at Rennie Roast Middle Schools. And she was addressing the Vermilion Parish School Board meeting where this incident began. The teachers have not gotten a raise in a very long time, but it was announced at this board meeting that the superintendent was getting a huge pay raise. And so this teacher, Dacia, basically stood up and said, this is infuriating. We're the ones doing the work. We're the ones teaching the children. And the school board called the cops. She was arrested. All right, let's go back to the phones here. Rob in Buffalo, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Just was giving you a call. I know that yesterday there was a caller. I think he was saying that, he really wants Trump to fail. He was hoping that he gets impeached and all this stuff. I think the last caller was just saying that he does definitely appreciate him over the alternative. And yes. I just wanted to say that I really think that we don't give Trump enough credit for kind of spearheading this attack on the fake news. Even some other potential candidates, even someone like a Ron Paul or Bernie. I know you've mentioned you prefer Bernie, but I can't imagine any of these people taking on the media the way that Trump is. And I think that is a huge benefit of having him in there. And
yeah, that is something that's very good to happen. And of course, the way the corporate media went after him during the campaign, they've earned his wrath. And we've got to take a break for commercials. Do you have more to share with us, Rob?
Yeah, I should.
All right, stay on the line. I'll come right back to you. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're talking with Rob in Buffalo about impeaching Trump. And again, everyone's throwing that word around rather recklessly because impeachment is a specific process to be used in the event of specific events. Congress can't just impeach Trump because they don't like him. It doesn't work that way. Trump has to be first convicted of an actual crime in the House of Representatives. Then the Senate decides whether he's going to be removed from office. We saw that in the Clinton administration, where he was impeached for obstruction of justice, lying under oath, but the Senate refused to remove him. So, what's next on your list, Rob?
Yeah, so like the caller yesterday, he was saying he hopes he's impeached. He hopes he, gets out of office. And there's a lot of animosity towards Trump. I mean, he definitely is not doing a perfect job by any means. He's definitely made his fair share of mistakes. But as I said, like he's taking on this attack on the fake news media. And
that's one of the things I agree with. Yes,
slowly but surely. Yeah, he's also taking on the FBI, though. Like, he's fired Jim Comey. Last I heard,
yeah, but look who he replaced him with.
Be resigning. Yeah, I mean, I'm not seeing much action still, but I don't know. Like, what's the deal with Ray, I guess? Is he's no good?
Well, we're not seeing anything come out of the FBI, and probably one of the reasons is that the new FBI director, Ray, it may be that his first level of subordinates, I mean, they're holdovers, and they may be blocking. Remember, there are a lot of people tangled up in this web of corruption surrounding the Clintons and going back to Arkansas in the 1980s. And a lot of people appear to be dirty with the Uranium One deal. A lot of people, we had a report came out the other day that the Clintons' friends were using the foundation as a money laundry. So we're talking about hundreds, if not thousands, of highly placed people who are all going to block any investigations out of fear that they themselves could ultimately go to prison or at least lose their careers.
Yeah, so I mean, there's all sorts of tangled webs there and everything, and it's not an easy job to do. So I mean, it looks like he's making some sort of an effort to try to clean up the FBI, but I mean, I don't know how much he can do, like, overnight.
Well,
like a lot of
he is the president, and he's made a lot of mistakes. I agree with some of the things he's done. I'm basically seeing a lack of action on the most important things, which is the military stand-down that he campaigned on, and the Clintons in prison, which I'm very keen to see. So I agree with his policies on NASA. Anyway, I agree with his policies on NASA. I'm sorry, I'm getting nasty echo here. I agree with what he's saying about NASA, pushing for the new technology. I certainly agree with his stance on immigration, except I'm not seeing all that much actually being accomplished. Yes, he's sending home the El Salvadorians. It's a good first start. But we're already 1 year into his 4-year term in office. He doesn't have all that much time left to get his agenda implemented.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, we're going to have to let you go for station identification. We'll be right back after these few words.
Have a good one.
Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, hour number 3. And before we get to the phone lines, I want to share this little tidbit of information. This is about the Golden Globe Awards. And no, I'm not going to talk about Oprah's 9-minute speech here. But the Golden Globes were draped in black. Most of the women were wearing black, and they were trying to make a statement about sexual harassment in Hollywood. The people who won the Golden Globes were using that microphone to just wag their finger against the systemic sexism and abuse of Hollywood. It's all for show. None of the actresses or actors who made the accusations against Harvey Weinstein were invited to attend. So you think about that one for a bit. All right, we're going to go to Chris in St. Petersburg. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Michael, that incident you mentioned about the airline asking everybody to delete their video, was there any incriminating video that survived?
Apparently there really wasn't anything of significance on the video other than the airline spokesperson explaining why the flight had first been delayed and then canceled. And apparently people were taking the videos because there wasn't a working PA system and the people in the back couldn't really hear what was being said. So they were recording it to basically play it back later with the volume up.
Oh, all right. So maybe it would be a civil thing that they could pursue. Well, there are utilities out there in case you are asked to delete by somebody alleging authority to delete the video, audio, pictures, or whatever incriminating evidence from your phone. One is called Recuva, R-E-C-U-V as in victory, A. It's from the same company that makes Sea Cleaner, about which I called last week.
Yes.
And, whenever, and it works quite well. So, if you delete whatever you have from your mobile device, you have, so you can tell them that, well, okay, well, I will, but, you should first object to it. And then shut down your phone to avoid recording anything else, or your mobile device to avoid recording anything else onto it, because Recuva will allow you, and other utilities will allow you to restore that as long as you haven't overwritten that original data. Of course,
disk recovery or memory recovery.
Yeah. So when you delete something, the data is still there. You're just deleting the index for the mobile device to be able to find it. And as long as you don't record anymore on there, like I say, shut down your phone if you're able to, shut down your mobile device, then the data will still be there as long as you don't overwrite it. But, you could also say that, well, I've streamed this event live, or you could bluff if you haven't been able to stream it live because you don't have a good enough signal. And say you streamed it live on YouTube or Vimeo or Periscope or BAM User, which, as you know, is shutting down January 22nd, or even Facebook, which, although it's unreliable compared to the others. So you can say to them that you can delete the video or even destroy my mobile device, but it's impossible for you to destroy the evidence because it's been streamed online. And after informing law enforcement of this, I find that they tend to behave themselves and move on to easier prey.
Unfortunately, based on what we're seeing lately from Facebook, to use an example, is that corporate and political interests are now able to go on out and try and erase these videos. Now, if somebody makes a copy, then it spreads completely out of control. That's what happened when WikiLeaks dumped the text of Fire and Fury. And realizing it was a copyright violation and they could be sued, they deleted that. But by then, it was just all over the place. It went viral almost immediately. I miss the days when smartphones actually had removable memory cards, where you could do a quick swap of cards and nobody was the wiser.
Yeah, well, they still do. I know Apple makes it more difficult, but, there are other people that you can say other people have tuned into your stream and they will download the video immediately if they haven't already, as of whether that's to be the case or not. And if you have recorded incriminating material onto your phone's memory, on your mobile device memory, delete the video, and you're told to delete it, then, you shut it down and you don't record anything else online. Well, after you record, you're pretty sure you're done recording that incriminating evidence, and you're pretty sure the event is over, then have a separate SD card handy so you can put that in your mobile device and hide the SD card onto which you've recorded that incriminating evidence.
Yep.
And, so you can release it later.
All right, well, thank you.
Like I say, you object to their instructions to delete the incriminating evidence, ask them for the law that under which they claim authority, and, just act like you're outraged about it, even though you're assuredly going to release the data later.
Well, thank you for the information, and, hopefully most of us are going to avoid situations like that, but it's always good to know how you can get around these situations. Ultimately, we all have a First Amendment right to be making audio and video recordings anywhere we want. An airline terminal is a public place. There is no expectation of privacy there. So, Chris, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go. We're going to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network, and we're going to go on over to James in Ohio. Aloha, James. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi. I had a few things about Oprah Winfrey that I haven't heard anybody mention in a long time. First of all, well, I hope she runs because she has some serious credibility problems. Number one, she formed her own cult like L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah.
Number two, she has a school in Africa that seems to be plagued by teachers. And number 3, she accused both of her parents of molesting her by way of recovered memory. Now, I do believe that people people who are subject to trauma can lose access to that memory and then recover it later. But in her case, you know, I listened to her talk and I listened to her parents, and I don't believe a word of what she said. So those 3 things, I think, could shoot her or really hurt her chances of becoming president. The other thing, before your other caller started talking, I was thinking, as far as, you know, like the FBI in Vegas and these police in this airport terminal, what came to mind was streaming, but I was thinking somebody should write an app so with one push you can record video and it's sent to a remote location automatically without going through any extra steps. That way, it wouldn't just be useful in cases of government trying to suppress evidence of things they didn't want people to know, but also, say a woman's about to be raped or whatever, that way they couldn't, you know, destroy the phone and destroy the evidence.
Well, I know that there was a Wi-Fi headset. I wish I could remember the name of it. I've got one in the drawer. It also has a built-in camera, and the software that comes with that will do that. You just hit the icon on the smartphone, and it starts recording from the camera and sends it to a designated remote server. So these things really are out there. But in terms of the government not wanting anybody to make a video, at this point, I've heard too many stories of smartphones and cameras suddenly not working in certain delicate areas. And I'm pretty sure that just like the NSA has backdoored everything else in our lives, that there is probably a remotely accessible switch inside the smartphone to disable the camera and microphone on command.
Well, I've heard government spokesmen say they have technology to shut down cell phones, not just broadcast, but specific functions within a localized area. So,
yeah,
you know.
I've heard that too, which is why I've kept one of my old shirt pocket cameras that doesn't have Wi-Fi or anything in it, and I keep that for situations where something interesting might be happening. Anyway, James, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go and get on back to the news here. Now, as you know, out in California, they legalized, as of the first of the year, recreational marijuana. And already Attorney General Jeff Sessions is on the warpath saying federal agents are coming to enforce the federal drug laws. Interestingly enough, Coachella, the city of Coachella, is imposing a citywide ban on all marijuana use. And this is going to cause a lot of friction between all these different layers of government who are headed off on all these different directions. And I think the primary reason they want to keep marijuana illegal is you can grow it in your backyard. And if you're puffing on something you've grown yourself, then you're not going down to that liquor store or you're not going down to the smoke shop and giving your money to some large corporation. I think that's the motive right there, because it's already been established that marijuana is far less harmful than tobacco or alcohol. So there we are. All right, let's talk about the subject of guns, all those guns out there. Apparently, up in Washington State, they passed a new law designed to basically prevent felons from acquiring guns, which is a good idea, domestic abusers, and sort of this fuzzy areas, they've tried to buy a gun at a gun show. And it's being over-applied. And Washington State gun dealers are reporting 1,200 denied purchases in the first 5 months. This happened last year, first 5 months of last year. And so the government can safely say it's not a gun ban. We're just keeping guns out of the hands of people who ought not to have them. Now, I concur with career felon. They shouldn't be allowed to have a gun until it is pretty much assured that they are truly reformed. I think there should be strict gun controls on people who are taking prescription antidepressants because of the link between those and violence. But, you know, this idea of one count of domestic abuse resulting in the loss of your gun rights, that I think is a little overkill, because pretty much every marriage has a rough spot where things can get violent. In my first marriage, my wife hit me on the back of the head with a cast iron skillet. The police just laughed when I filed the report. I'm very lucky with Claire. Claire and I have never had an argument that went that far. But it does happen. We hear it all the time in neighboring units. If it's just once or twice, I don't think it justifies depriving somebody of their Second Amendment rights. Now, apparently, Democrat gun grabbers demanded a study into the sale of guns online. They spent 2 years attempting to buy illegal guns on the so-called dark web, and they failed every single time. It's not a real problem. It's just something they like to scream. You can get guns on the dark web. Nope, can't. Doesn't really happen. All right, let's talk about science and health here now. One of the areas that people really need to be careful about dealing with medical care, the medical establishment, is that obviously you're in this suite of offices and a waiting room with a lot of other people who are sick, and they may be sick with something that is different from what you're dealing with, which can then pile on there. So you have to be very, very careful. Last time I took Claire over to the doctor, half of everybody in the waiting room were wearing facial masks. But apparently there is a big problem with inadequate protocols in nursing homes, where basic steps that would prevent infections, washing hands, isolating contagious patients, keeping ill nurses, ill practitioners from coming to work, they're ignored in nursing homes. And it's endangering the residents and the staff and spreading hazardous germs. Now, Kaiser Health News did an analysis of 4 years of federal inspection records showing 74% of nursing homes have been cited for lapses in infection control, more than for any other type of health violation. In California, health inspectors have cited all but 133 of the state's 1,251 homes. Here's the problem. Outside of the citation, nothing gets done. Staff aren't fired. Nursing homes aren't penalized. I guess the attitude is, well, these are a bunch of old people anyway. They're not going to be around much longer. We just don't have to be all that careful. And I don't want to turn all of my listeners here into a bunch of germophobes, but there's a lot of stuff out there, like this current flu. So you got to be a little bit careful. All right, let's talk about human-caused global warming. The Arctic has come to Massachusetts. Ocean Bay is completely frozen over. This is just the third time in the last 80 years that this has happened. They're reporting heavy snowfall in China. 21 people have died because of the heavy snowfall. Apparently it's snowing so hard it's actually damaging houses. It's damaging power facilities. The intense cold is harming agriculture. And the provinces that have been badly hit by the weather are Anhui, Henan, Jiangsu, Hubei, Hunan, Shaanxi, and Chongqing municipality. So it's really nasty. Now, if you're going to get trapped in by the snow and ice, there is no better place to have it happen than a Swiss ski resort. And this is a resort right on the edge of the famous Matterhorn Peak, which is famous only because Walt Disney copied it for his theme park in Anaheim. If he hadn't done that, nobody would know what the Matterhorn was other than a mountaineer. But apparently the snow is so heavy, they've had to close the ski slopes out of fear of avalanche. They've had to close the hiking trails, the cable cars are shut down, and the roads and train service into the nearby city of Zermatt are shut down as well. All right, we're going to go ahead and grab a phone call. Dan in Washington State, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, thanks for taking the call. Hopefully my phone doesn't cut out here. I'm in the middle of Montana. But just curious, did you see that movie with Tom Cruise, Made in America, about the CIA smuggling drugs on Barry Seal and Aiea and Contra?
No, I haven't, but it's on the pay-per-view channel now, and Claire and I are planning on watching it tonight.
Okay, yeah, good. I'm just curious. Maybe give us a review of how historically accurate it was, because in the movie they showed the planes flying into Mena, Arkansas, but they didn't show anything about Bill Clinton's connection. They just showed like Bush and Reagan and Oliver North.
Yeah.
And then it kind of stopped there. So I just wondered what is the real history there? They just kept shipping it into Mena, Arkansas, kind of?
Well, I think probably the best history that I am aware of is the book Compromised, Clinton, Bush, and the CIA, written by Terry Reid, who was part of the operation down there. And at this point, I don't think anybody knows the whole history. We all just know certain bits and pieces of it. But yes, I'll be talking about the film on the show tomorrow.
Okay. All right, great. Yeah, I look forward to it.
Well, thank you very much for the phone call. And we're going to let you go here. Okay, we're talking about human-caused global warming. And they're trying to rebrand. When it's actually started getting demonstrably colder, they called it climate change. And then somebody pointed out, climate changes all the time. That's the way it works. So now Al Gore has rebranded it as the climate crisis. And it may well be a crisis if some of these prognostications about solar output prove to be accurate. The crisis is just going in the opposite direction that Al Gore claimed it was. And limiting carbon dioxide is not going to stop a new mini ice age. And that's why they're still trying to say global warming is somehow causing all of this. No, that doesn't work. Tell you what, take a pan of water, put it on the stove on low heat. When it freezes over, get back to me. We're going to take a break here for commercials. We'll be right back. Hi, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about human-caused global warming, the climate crisis, the snow job. And apparently the Swedish government is warning its citizens to be prepared for at least a week without help. Now, they're not saying why they're issuing this warning, and it's very unusual for the Swedish government to say something like this. But it strikes me that a likely possibility is that Sweden is expecting there to be massive, huge snowstorms that are going to cut people off from the supply chain, and they want them to be able to get through there. It's good advice anyway. It's really, really good advice. Now, yesterday we were talking about how it snowed in the Sahara Desert, and what made it really unusual was that it snowed in the Sahara last year. First time they've had snow 2 years in a row that anybody can recall, as far as records are going back here. Today we're hearing that the snow on the Sahara Desert in some places measured as much as 15 inches deep. That's 1 with a 5 after it, inches of snow in the Sahara Desert. Gosh darn that. Human-caused global warming. Well, the carbon Nazis have tried to mount a counter-propaganda, and they're talking about this massive heat wave going on in Australia, so that they can say, well, it may be cold here, but oh boy, it's just broiling over here, and the roads are melting, and everything's falling apart, and I'm not able to find any confirmation for any of it. But going back and looking at the Sydney Morning Herald, January 9th, 1896 issue, the Herald reported that Australia was cooling down, and the temperatures at Bourke were only 117 degrees. That's 10 degrees hotter than it is right now. All right, we're going to go ahead and take another phone call from Sal Jr. in Colorado. Aloha, Sal. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha. I just have a quote for you from Al Gore. This could be the quote of the century.
Okay.
And he stated, "The earth is getting colder because it's getting warmer."
Yes. That's what they've been trying to say for years now, ever since it obviously started getting colder, is, global warming is making for colder winters. That's in contrast with 2000 when they were saying global warming means there'll be no more snow and ice for winter.
Right. So that's it. Just wanted to give you his quote.
Yeah, I'd seen that the other day, and I have to admire him for his persistence, or stubbornness, or however you want to describe it. You need to remember, Al Gore is not a scientist. He's a politician. When he was in college, he got barely passing grades in the few science classes he actually took. At one point, he claimed the temperature of the Earth's core was millions of degrees, and he's off by a few zeros on that one. He's doing what politicians do. Take something that happens naturally, declare it a crisis, and sell you a solution. Speaking of selling, looking at all the storms of last year, hurricanes, wildfires, extreme cold weather, basically it totals up to 16 weather disasters last year, and a total loss of $306 billion, which makes 2017 the costliest year in U.S. history in terms of recovering from disasters. Maybe somebody up there doesn't like our country anymore because our government is behaving so badly. Now, if you use products like exfoliants, personal care products that have a little scrubbing effect, those are about to go away or drastically change. Most of these products are using these little plastic micro beads. And it turns out that these beads, after they're being used, they go into the water treatment plant, they're getting out into the environment, and wildlife is eating them. Ultimately, people are eating them, and they're now being banned from toothpaste, exfoliant products, various face scrubs, because they do harm wildlife. And it wouldn't take that much imagination to come up with something that is going to be a scrubbing surface that's edible or biodegradable. And plastics are wonderful, they're useful, they make all kinds of cases, but they are a toxic pollutant when disposed of. Far more toxic than carbon dioxide. And most plastics, unfortunately, cannot be recycled. And that is a real problem that we have to deal with. Our consumer culture, especially with the planned obsolescence, it really is bad for the environment. All right, we're going to take another break here for commercials, and we'll be back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show, and we're going to take a phone call now from Steve. And Steve Elkins, of course. Hi, Steve. Welcome back to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, you just mentioned about those things getting in the water system, and when you mentioned that exfoliator, I actually just have one here, believe it or not. I looked at it, made by St. Ives, and I have not seen the beads ones yet, but that's good that you bring that up, if they still make that. I didn't know that. But mine says walnut shell is being used nowadays, and I know when I worked in the wine industry, we used to skim off the grape seeds. The grape seeds would be crushed up and put into these exfoliator lotions and things like that. So it's let you know there's one out there on the market that has walnut seeds, walnut shell. Yeah,
I think I've seen the walnut shell, ground up walnut shell scrubbing material in one of Claire's products here. This story was originally posted at What Really Happened by one of our members, and I'm looking at the original article, and it appears to be undated. But it talks about a ban taking place back in 2015, 2016. So the problem may have already become moot at this point. But we do have to pay a lot of attention to what they're putting in products, especially new products with new functions. They'll put in there whatever works, and then somewhere down the road, somebody figures out that it's causing harm. Oh, well, gee, we're sorry. We'll change to something else.
Well, I'm still waiting for the first public service announcement by the government telling you not to flush your medications, your old medications, down the toilet. I get so irritated when I hear people still doing this. And you do have to look around a little bit, but some of your pharmacies will take these medications off your hand, and they'll destroy them in the right way. But people are still flushing medications down the toilet, and I don't have a clue of why our government tells us they care about our water, the EPA, and nobody is addressing this issue. I have yet, like I said, to see a public service announcement to say, don't do this, find these facilities, we'll help you find a facility to destroy these meds. It's crazy.
That's a very good suggestion here, and it is a major problem because people, especially of fragile health, if they get even a tiny dose of a totally inappropriate medication from their tap water, it could cause them a great deal of harm. Now, yes, for going from here to the water treatment plant and back, it's going to get mixed in pretty much all over the city, but it's still going to be an issue, and it is dangerous. And, yeah, there has to be a better way of destroying some of these medications.
No, we've seen a lot more violence and a lot of more psychiatric stuff. It makes you wonder about if some of that SSRI stuff is not getting filtered out in our treatment plants.
The treatment plants aren't set up to filter out chemicals. They'll fill out the nasty stuff, but they're not set up to block pharmaceutical chemicals. They're not designed to do that at all.
And last thing I'll leave you with, you are correct. Hillary will never allow Oprah Winfrey to take the Oval Office. That'll never happen.
Yes.
Never happen.
I'm surprised that nobody took a shot at Trump during the general campaign, but he had really good security, and I hope he keeps his good security as well.
Hey, thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
Thanks an awful lot, and I'm getting emails. Coconut oil mixed with any sugar makes a good all-natural face scrub, unless you're diabetic here. All right, we're going to take another phone call from Sherry in Fredericksburg. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, and also Swiss formula. I won't say there's a name for it. You can get it at most grocery stores, apricot scrub, and it has little pieces of walnut shell powder in it and stuff like that.
I think that's the one that Claire has. I think that's the one that Claire has.
Yeah, and it works better than the little beads. Little beads get old if you keep them too long, and then they're all soft and don't work as well. So I'm happy to throw that away. And I want to say how happy I am to hear your news again. Even if I just get the last hour, I'm so happy. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
thank you very much. Okay. Well, thank you for the phone call, and we're going to let you go. The phone lines are now open. Let's get back to the world of computers. Apparently, security researchers have discovered a set of zero-day vulnerabilities within the Dell EMC Data Protection Suite family products that allow attackers to fully hijack systems. Now, it's one thing to find an opening in the computer, but when it's in the part of the computer that's actually supposed to be protecting your data, that's very worrisome. Now, I got an email from somebody saying they don't understand what a zero-day vulnerability means. That means it's only just been discovered, and we're at day 0. And the idea is that somebody who has put out that vulnerability or using that vulnerability, they're going to have a window of time where they can do mischief with it until the computer and software companies issue yet another patch here. So apparently, getting on back to Dell, actually by Digital Defense was the company that found it, their vulnerability research team stumbled across a set of severe vulnerabilities that allow attackers to compromise products including Dell EMC Avamar Server, Networker Virtual Edition, and Integrated Data Protection Appliance. There are just too many of these out there. And we know that the NSA has backdoored computers in the past. Windows NT had the NSA key. I think what they're finding, especially these CPU chips, which all seem to have the same problem, the same exploit. I think these are backdoors ordered by the government. Or in the case of Intel, they're put in there by the Israeli government, because Intel has moved a lot of their operations to Israel. Now, they're having a lot of fun over at the Consumer Electronics Show. I've never actually been able to attend one myself. I certainly would like to at some point, because I like gadgets and I like toys here. And as you know, LG is showing off these concept robots for hotel workers that will basically carry luggage and clean the room and do various other things and put more people out of work. And they're having their issues over there. Not as bad as when Bill Gates tried to demonstrate plug and play and got the B-sod. But apparently over at the airport, they were going to demonstrate a passenger drone. A drone that was going to basically, a pilotless drone that would carry passengers. And unfortunately, the Surefly passenger drone was grounded by a light drizzle. And so the company said, we're concerned over safety, we're not going to demonstrate this at this time. Another robot created by LG to help users control their smart home apparently failed on stage at its Consumer Electronics Show debut. And the robot, Chloe, was meant to be the centerpiece of LG's presentation when it was supposed to show how new artificial intelligence tech could enhance the use of kitchen appliances. Instead, it just sat there blinking. It was a disastrous debut for the bot. It's all over social media. Now, Samsung has announced that starting 2 years from today, every single product they make will be able to attach to the Internet of Things, whether you like it or not. Intel, apparently trying to recover from the problems with their current chips, have announced they've had a major breakthrough in a quantum computing chip. Now, this is a 49-qubit quantum computing chip. And VR applications for content, AI self-learning, and autonomous vehicles platform. Now, for a quantum chip, 49-qubit isn't all that much, so we're kind of at the stage of the original 8080 CPU, back in the good old days. Story coming out of the Register in Great Britain, Windows 10 as a service is incoming. And it's another year, another round of updates, and the company calls this Windows as a service. Now, they're selling it as an idea that you get a constant flow of improvements and security patches, which you got anyway with your perpetual license as operating system. But we know where the computing industry wants to go. They want everything to be rented month to month, the operating system, the applications, maybe even the computer itself, to maximize their profitability. Now, here's a story coming out of Little Rock, Arkansas. That's Clinton country, people. Apparently, there is a new startup company, and it's going to be using robots to manufacture T-shirts. And apparently, it's going to make a lot of T-shirts. These robots can churn them out one every 22 seconds. So just under 3 completed T-shirts per minute. You can do the math from here on out. That's a lot of T-shirts. Now, Microsoft is gearing up here for a little bit of a collision with many well-known antivirus products. And apparently, according to an update issued this week, Microsoft is saying Windows users will not receive the January 2018 patch, security updates, or any subsequent patch, Tuesday updates, unless the antivirus program they are using becomes compatible with the patches that have been issued for Windows Meltdown and Spectre. As you know, they've had some major issues with the patches that have already gone out. They are slowing machines down, including servers, which is a class of machine you don't want to slow down. Some older machines have been bricked. They literally will not restart, will not restore, will not reinstall the operating system. So they really messed this one up here. And it's reached the point where I'm thinking, I want to turn off all updates on the machine, because the danger from Microsoft appears to be greater than the danger from the cyber criminals. We've allowed this technology to become decadent. It's too complex. There's a beauty and elegance in simplicity. And I know that's a recurring theme throughout history, where during the beginning of the industrial age, and certain things wouldn't work because there were too many moving parts and it would wear out too quickly. But I do think that all of this could be made a lot simpler, certainly easier for the end user to use. Speaking of the end user, Donald Trump has signed an executive order to expand broadband access in rural United States. And that will be a really, really good thing. But the latest word coming on out is that Donald Trump may be clearing the path for Julian Assange to leave London and come to the United States without fear of arrest. The U.S. government has ended its 8-year-long grand jury proceedings against WikiLeaks that included the WikiLeaks various vault releases on CIA spy technology. Now, the laws regarding this kind of information are very, very clear. If WikiLeaks had broken in to the CIA and stolen this material, they would be in serious trouble. If WikiLeaks approached somebody who worked for CIA and requested this information, that would be a crime under the Espionage Act. But if somebody just whistleblowers and sends this material to WikiLeaks, WikiLeaks is in the clear, and they are protected by the First Amendment to publish the information. And we, the American people, do have a legitimate right to know how we are being spied on by the government in violation of that Fourth Amendment. Now, over in France, they have some very strict laws regarding planned obsolescence. That is, companies putting out products that are designed to fail in a short period of time so that you are then forced to buy another one over and over and over again. Like cell phone, new cell phone every 3 years, new car every 5 years, so forth and so on. There's a wonderful documentary called Pyramids of Waste. It's also named The Light Bulb Conspiracy that talks about this, how prevalent it is in the American culture. We just sort of accept it as the way things are supposed to be. And they're not. Prior to this deliberate planned obsolescence, American companies made products that were made to last a very long time. But that's all gone away, because a product that doesn't break down or wear out is considered a business failure. France has other ideas, and French prosecutors have launched a probe on planned obsolescence in the case of the Apple iPhone. Under French law, it is a crime to intentionally shorten the lifespan of a product with the aim of making customers replace it. Now, last December, Apple admitted older iPhone models were deliberately being slowed down through the updates, another reason to turn off updates, and insisted it was because of the battery. But apparently people aren't buying that. The French investigation is being handled by the Economy Ministry's Consumer Protection Agency. This follows a legal complaint filed last month by pro-consumer group Stop Planned Obsolescence. France is the third country to investigate Apple after Israel and the United States, but the only one in which the alleged offense is a crime. Penalties could include up to 5% of annual turnover, even a jail term. Now, SpaceX has had a little bit of a setback, maybe. there was this highly classified, expensive government satellite called Zuma, and it was launched into space on a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket from Cape Canaveral. And they're reporting it as being destroyed. Now, the bottom stage of the Falcon 9 did return in soft land. The upper stage apparently vanished. The official story is it failed to release the Zuma satellite. Now, given some of the other things the U.S. government's been doing up in space lately, what if they wanted to launch a stealth satellite and claim it didn't get there? And I know there are all kinds of hobbyists on Earth who like to track debris orbiting over them, and they might identify it. But if it is true, if that's what happened, I feel bad for the people at SpaceX because they're doing really good work. And if I were still young, I'd apply for a job over there. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be back with the last segment of our program today after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, final segment of our program today. I'm looking at this video. It's actually kind of fun here. Apparently in North Carolina, alligators are sticking their noses up through the ice to survive the freezing temperatures, trying to get a little warmth from the air. And it looks kind of funny to just see all this ice and then there's this little alligator snout sticking out. A lot of people have been writing in with their suggestions for exfoliant scrubs, sugar, salt, various other things as well. Speaking of sugar, apparently there's a sugar additive, trehalose, and it's a sugar that's added to a wide range of food products, and apparently it may have fueled the spread of 2 superbugs. And what we mean by a superbug is one that is very difficult to treat. There's no cure, they're antibiotic resistant, and so forth. So apparently this came out in the journal Nature, and it illustrates the unintended consequences of introducing otherwise harmless additives to the food supply. Well, obviously it's not harmless. Now, over in Egypt, they've just passed an anti-atheism law, meaning if you are in Egypt and you are asked, what is your religion, you're going to have to name a religion. You know, pick one, just hit a little checkbox there. And a lot of people are very concerned that this is going to force many Egyptians to basically become liars. It's not an anti-atheism law, it's an anti-honesty law. And Egypt has gone the exact opposite direction as the original U.S. government. The original U.S. government didn't want to have anything to do with religion. That's why they had that provision in the First Amendment. Congress shall make no laws respecting an institution of religion. Everybody was free to worship as they saw fit, or if they didn't see fit, they were free to go play golf. So this is a bad law. This is a very bad law. I wonder if they're going to follow it up with mandatory weekly visits to a specific house of worship. Amazing. Now over in China, China's doing a lot of wonderful things here. They've just completed the world's longest sea bridge. It is 55 kilometers long. Took 6 years preparation, 8 years to build it. It links Hong Kong, Zhuhai, and Macau. And that is just amazing to consider. Bridges are beautiful if they're engineered correctly. Apparently the Golden Gate Bridge just got itself a suicide net. They're just hanging it on out there. So no more suicides off the Golden Gate. Besides, that's what the Bay Bridge is for here. And finally, an interesting story. Archaeologists in India have found a 5,000-year-old rock painting that appeared to show some hunters and 2 bright objects in the sky. And they finally figured out this is a depiction of a supernova, the world's oldest. There's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. Please stay tuned for John Stedmiller's program. He's got a lot of interesting things to share with you. Please take what you learn here and share it with all of your friends and family, especially how to have honest elections. We'll be back here tomorrow. Aloha, America.